Remember this? Arsenal, one of the biggest clubs in the world, a club with history, identity, and a fan base that bleeds red and white, sitting in 8th place in the Premier League. No Champions League, no title challenge, no real direction. This was the Arsenal that Unai Emery could not fix. The Arsenal that had Freddie Ljungberg standing on the touchline as an interim manager, looking like a man trying to stop a flood with his bare hands. The Arsenal that after 22 legendary years under Arsène Wenger had completely lost its identity. And then, the club turned to a man who had never managed a single professional game in his life. A former Arsenal captain, yes, but more recently an assistant coach. The number 2. The man sitting beside Pep Guardiola at Manchester City, carrying the clipboard, running the training sessions, absorbing everything. His name was Mikel Arteta. And what he did at Arsenal over the next 6 years is one of the most remarkable rebuilding stories in modern football. This is how he did it.
The mess he inherited. To understand what Arteta achieved, you first have to understand exactly what he walked into. Because it was not just a struggling football team. It was a club in genuine crisis, on the pitch and off it. Arsène Wenger had left in 2018 after 22 years. Whatever you think about those final seasons, Wenger was Arsenal. He built the culture, the style, the identity. When he left, the club had no clear idea of what it was anymore. Unai Emery came in and lasted 18 months. He could not get the dressing room. He could not establish a style. He lost the players, lost the fans, and was eventually sacked in November 2019, with Arsenal in 8th place and on a 7-game winless run in the Premier League. Freddie Ljungberg took over as caretaker, a club legend, but this was not a situation for sentiment. Arsenal drew, lost. The team looked frightened, disorganized, without belief. Arteta was appointed on the 20th of December 2019. He inherited a squad with serious attitude problems, players who were not pulling in the same direction, questionable recruitment decisions stacked on top of each other, and a wage bill that made no sense for where the club actually was. This was not a project with a solid foundation that just needed a new direction. This was raw, and Arteta had to build from it.
The Guardiola blueprint. Now, here is the part that makes this story fascinating. Before Arteta became a manager, he spent 3 years as Pep Guardiola's assistant at Manchester City, from 2016 to 2019. 3 years inside arguably the most tactically advanced coaching environment in world football. Think about what that means. Guardiola, the man who reinvented how football is played at Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and then City, had Arteta beside him every single day. In the meetings, on the training pitch, inside the tactical sessions. Arteta was not just watching, he was learning, contributing, and absorbing a philosophy of football that is as sophisticated as anything the sport has ever seen. High pressing, positional play, aggressive ball recovery, controlling games through possession and movement. A team that defends from the front and attacks as a unit. These were not just tactics Arteta had read about, these were principles he had helped implement at the highest level. When he arrived at Arsenal, he brought all of that with him. The challenge was translating a Guardiola-level philosophy into a squad that was miles away from Guardiola-level quality. That gap between the vision and the reality of what was in front of him is what defined the first 2 years of his time at the club.
Year 1 and 2, discipline first. Arteta's first move was not tactical. It was cultural. He walked into that dressing room and immediately made it clear. The standards were changing. Players who were not committed to the project would not have a future at the club. The comfort zone was gone. The entitlement was gone. Training intensity went up. Accountability went up. Everything was about detail, discipline, and collective responsibility. Some big names left, or were pushed out.
Mesut Ozil, once the highest paid player in the club's history, was frozen out and eventually had his contract terminated. It was a brutal decision that divided opinion at the time, but it sent a message to every single person in that dressing room about the standards Arteta expected. On the pitch, the first full season, 2020-21, was difficult. Arsenal finished 8th in the Premier League, their lowest league finish in 25 years. Fans were frustrated. Questions were being asked publicly about whether Arteta was the right man. But look closer at that season, and you see something important happening beneath the surface. The team was starting to press with more structure. The defensive shape was more organized. Young players were being trusted and developed. The foundations, slowly, quietly, were being laid.
The recruitment revolution. One of the most underrated parts of Arsenal's transformation under Arteta is the recruitment, because a manager can only work with what he has. And what Arsenal started bringing in from 2021 onwards was a completely different level of player. Not just in quality, but in profile. Ben White, Gabriel Magalhaes, Thomas Partey, Martin Ødegaard, Aaron Ramsdale, Alexander Zinchenko, Gabriel Martinelli, Bukayo Saka, already at the club but now given the platform to become world-class. And then Declan Rice, brought in for over £100 million, adding steel and dynamism to the engine room. Every signing had a purpose. Every player fit a specific role in the system Arteta was building. This was not panic buying or reputation signing. It was surgical, structured recruitment. The right age, the right mentality, the right technical profile. And crucially, almost all of them bought into Arteta's culture immediately. The dressing room that had felt fractured and leaderless under previous managers became one of the most united in the Premier League. You could see it in the celebrations, in the body language, in the way they defended for each other when things got hard.
The title race, Arsenal announced themselves. The 2022-23 season was when the football world truly stood up and paid attention. Arsenal led the Premier League for the majority of the season. Not just leading, dominating at times. Playing some of the most attractive, purposeful, high-energy football in Europe. Pressing teams into submission. Saka on the right, Martinelli on the left, Ødegaard pulling the strings in the middle. It was a joy to watch. They ultimately fell short. Manchester City, the most relentless title-winning machine of the era, caught and passed them in the final stretch. It hurt. And for some fans, it felt like the familiar story of Arsenal promising much and delivering little. But step back and look at what that season actually represented. A team that 2 years earlier had finished 8th, with a group of players mostly under 25, had just pushed the greatest club side in Premier League history all the way to the final weeks of the season. That is not failure. That is a statement. The 2023-24 season came, and Arsenal pushed City again. Another title race. Another extraordinary run. The consistency was no longer a coincidence. It was proof that what Arteta had built was real, structured, and sustainable.
What makes Arteta different? There are plenty of managers who inherit big clubs and talk about rebuilding. Very few actually do it. So what is it about Arteta specifically that made this work? First, the clarity of his vision. From day one, Arteta knew exactly what kind of team he wanted to build and exactly what kind of culture he wanted to create. He never wavered from that, even when results made it uncomfortable. Second, his man management. The way he has developed young players like Saka and Martinelli into world-class performers, while also integrating experienced international players into a clear system, speaks to a level of emotional intelligence that goes beyond tactics. Third, the Guardiola influence, used intelligently. Arteta did not copy Guardiola. He took the principles, adapted them to his squad, and made them his own. That is a much harder thing to do than it sounds. And fourth, patience. His own patience and the patience the club showed in him during those difficult early seasons.
That relationship between a manager and a club, the trust required to stay the course when results are poor, is one of the rarest things in modern football. Arsenal got it right.
In conclusion, 6 years ago, Arsenal were 8th in the Premier League, without direction, without identity, and without belief. A club drifting. Today, Arsenal are genuine title contenders. A young, hungry, organized, brilliantly coached team that the whole of Europe takes seriously. A team built with intelligence, patience, and a clear footballing philosophy. A team that scares opponents. Mikel Arteta, the assistant, the number 2, the man with no managerial experience, walked into one of the hardest jobs in English football and turned it into one of the most exciting projects in Europe. The Premier League title has not come yet, but if you have watched this Arsenal team over the last 3 seasons, you already know. It is not a question of if. It is a question of when. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, do you think Arteta will win the Premier League title? And how far can this Arsenal team go? Let us talk. See you in the next one.